No, and I remember one of the first early conversations that, you know, we had, and we also had it as well, was how do we take, you know, the experience that people are having online and just take it a little bit further, right? Because I know for myself, when I was calling users like early on and just asking about their experience, like, hey, what'd you like about, you know, XYZ platform, et cetera, one of the biggest things that really stood out was that, oh, when I would be in these discussions, now I would go have this conversation with my friends offline, or like, you know, somebody would mention this and now I'm sharing it with somebody, right? And so I remember one of the big things that, you know, I challenge you from a design standpoint is like, how do we design for those moments?
Yeah.
That's the outcome we want to go, because it's super dope to be able to connect with people, you know, online, et cetera, but like, that still does not take away from, you know, when you actually connect in person. And so that's been one of the things I've been excited to like just see how we've evolved that through the design process. Even like, you know, us listening to the community when it comes to like the takeaway feature, right? So it's little things like that that I think is ultimately going to make this product, you know, special. But there's still a lot that we have, you know, we have to learn, you know, to be able to build something.
No, I hear you 100%. Like, I love this idea of the metaverse because it's like blending the IRL with the URL,
yeah.
you know? And it's like, okay, we know how conversations like happen in real life, right? They're spontaneous, there are tons of different threads that happen. And especially when you're having like a large group, like, you know, on the stage you can have 1 or 2 or 3 people talking, but then, you know, how do you create a way for the rest of the community to engage as well? So that's where like that in conversation, you know, chat feature comes into play. Or then being able to look back at your conversation, like, well, there are a lot of bars that were dropped here, and this is powerful, right? And so we introduce a feature for people to share their takeaways. So it's like, it's easy for you to go back, especially like when we look at how much like wisdom and value is being shared in these channels, right? I think it's very powerful.
And I think something that like we just even like recently learned about live audio is that it's ephemeral, meaning like it happens now, when it's done, it's over. And so the takeaways, one, provides a way to be able to capture like, you know, the meaningful and substance things from these conversations, but even furthermore from a product standpoint, that's potential content that is, you know, being created as well, and people could like almost consume it as like a tweet in a sense, right? But it also goes back to the strategy too of like, okay, there's a potential growth hack here where you can share these takeaways as tweets on Twitter as well. So people, and so yeah, like throughout this whole process, I think just like there's been a lot of intention and thoughtfulness that's been put in. I think holistically across the team, from like, you know, we have all the engineers participate in it, you know, yourself, Diaundra, you know, you provide a whole, you know, marketing brand standpoint. Jamie comes in from the community standpoint, Min, you know, from the growth standpoint. And it's been super dope because I think this experience has been relatively like my most collaborative and like most fruitful collaboration as well. Because I think we each bring a certain amount of like humility to the table, where it's like, okay, we realize we have a lot of assumptions that are rooted in our experiences, but what more can we learn, right? And I think that is very valuable because compared to, you know, the counterparts, I'm just gonna call it, you know, white folks that are working at these other tech companies and are the ones building it, those are typically the blind spots, right? Like they see, you know, blackness as something that is monolithic when, you know, it's very broad and it's also very diverse and exists on a spectrum. And so I think for us too, like although we're building for the community, we can't be arrogant and assume that we know the community. There's still so much that, you know, we have to learn all together.
Yeah, I think the most common phrase we've all said across the team is that you don't know what you don't know. And I appreciate our humility there, because if you truly are building with the community, you have to go figure it out with them, right? You have to say, what are the different features that you need and how do we even just enhance, right? Not create new experiences, but enhance the beauty of life that we're already existing and living in. And so even from a feature perspective, like what I really appreciated your guys' ideation around is setting the context of that space, right? Because you might go into a conversation in real life and the vibe is very different from going to a coffee shop to, you know, maybe a night party to your grandma's kitchen. And so you guys even just setting the stage when you hop into a conversation. Is this a kickback? Is this a conversation, etc.? It allows you to bring in those cues from in real life to people who are across the globe. Like, and that's really our vision, is that this is not just for the US Black experience, it's for our entire diaspora, because there's information all over the world. And if you really truly don't know what you don't know, we gotta go figure it out with everyone.
I love that.
And I think this even, building off the information, like this even ties back into a conversation we were having last night at dinner. And essentially that's kind of how I view us. It's like, going back to what Diaundra was saying, like the app is just a vehicle. But essentially what we're facilitating are experiences in the share of information, right? And so like, how do you do that in a very efficient way? Because if you think about like where live audio is today, we're just gonna call it what it is. Discovery sucks. Like, how do you quickly be able to find? And I think, that exploration where we went through to like, okay, what are the context clues people need to be able to understand, like, okay, this is one, the type of experience that is, going on. Two, if this is an experience that I want to hop in, this is kind of how I should approach it. And three, like, okay, this is what I can bring to the table. And I think that's been able to facilitate like more meaningful kind of interactions, but I think there's still a lot of work that we can do around that. But I do think that was a pretty good decision on our part to have this conversation.